Okay, so once again, finding a nice comfortable position where you can be relaxed and yet alert. And if possible, having the knees below the hips and the pelvis tilted a bit forward and plugging that spine, that sacrum into the pelvis and centering the spine so it's not leaning back or forward or side to side. Maybe just moving it a little bit each way to see where it feels the best, the least effort. And opening up the chest, maybe pressing the shoulder blades into the back body, extending the neck, the top of the head. And with your next out breath, allowing the body to soften, just hang off the spine. And noticing sensation throughout the body. Noticing how sensation moves with the breath. Aware of when you're breathing in and when you're breathing out. And doing your best to welcome whatever's there, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, wanted or unwanted. And noticing any resistance to letting yourself experience it. Any bracing in the body. If you notice that, just dropping whatever effort you're making to brace or to hold. And noticing any mental talk around wanting things to be different, or any feeling of wanting things to be different. Again, not engaging with that mental talk, just dropping any interest in it, letting go of the pull. And doing your best to keep your attention on the body breathing, the sensations in the body breathing. And noticing who notices. Who notices the body breathing? Who notices the resistance? Noticing if there's any sense of your current experience being not okay, being a problem. You, the one who's aware. And if you notice that, then doing your best to drop it, to say there's no problem here. Things may not be as I want. but that's no problem. I can drop any sense that there's any problem with this experience, any sense of defending or struggle. I can drop that and just open to whatever's there. There might be fear or restlessness, sleepiness. Embrace it all. Let it all seep in to the core of this experience. And if there's any sense of wanting to figure things out, not being quite sure what to do, then just accept that. Accept that not knowing. Open to it. Gee, is that resistance? Don't know. How can I feel better? Don't know. Why is it so hard to let go? Don't know. Just let yourself bathe in that not knowing. There's no problem. Am I ever going to be free from tension, anxiety? Don't know. When will COVID finally be over? Don't know. Will I get it? Maybe again? Will it be serious? Don't know. Whenever a question comes up and there's a sense of wanting to know or needing to know, don't know. Just let yourself experience that not knowing. Notice what it feels like in the body. Notice the reaction of the mind. Notice what's going on with you, the awareness, the witness. What's going to happen in Ukraine and Russia? Don't know. Continuing to be aware of the body breathing. And of any resistance in this experience. Doing your best to drop any resistance. And just rest. Riding the waves of the breath. Resting in the not knowing. Will I ever be free from suffering? From this suffering? Don't know. What's going to happen to me? When am I going to get sick or die? Don't know. What's going to happen after I die? Don't know. Just riding the waves of the breath. relaxing. Releasing the pull of any thoughts. Asking who notices. Doing your best to love whatever's there. However ugly it may be, however unwanted, can you love it? Can you appreciate that it has something to teach you? That it's not separate from you. And may this practice bring happiness and peace to myself. And may this practice bring happiness and peace to those around me. And to everyone they touch, and everyone they touch, and so on, and so on. And now bringing this meditation to an end, allowing the eyes to open if they're closed, moving whatever wants to be moved and stretching whatever wants to be stretched, massaging whatever wants to be massaged. So does anyone want to share their experience there or have any questions?
Can I have a question or a suggestion?
Yeah.
I'm really curious, the don't know part.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be curious to hear every person's response to that.
What was your response?
Profound relief.
Mm-hmm. Anyone share that response? Yeah.
I shared that response. I've had kind of a week of like not being aware, which has been really challenging for me and quite frustrating. And so even in that meditation, my mind kept wanting and going to different places, mostly the same place over and over again, but with the different spin on stuff like work stuff anyways. So yeah, to just go, I don't know, it's kind of a relief.
Yeah. Yeah. How about other folks? And please share if it was like the opposite. Because different people are going to have different experiences. Jill, did you want to share, or was that just a yes, you found it a relief?
Yeah, it was more, that's kind of where I was too. Yeah, it was fairly disjointed for me. And so I was grateful not to have to know anything during it, and it felt like a relief.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, we often put so much pressure on ourselves to find the answer, get it right. And that's the great secret. You know, this whole letting go practice, it's not when you can actually just say, oh, I don't have to figure this out.
Mhm.
That's letting go.
Mm.
I don't have to stop this thing. I don't have to make it go away. I don't have to do what my personal mind tells me to do, which is often figuring it out, getting it right.
Mm.
Philip?
There's a tension there for me because in my worldly life, I will often find myself Googling, I don't know how many times a day, because I have to know. I have to know something. But as soon as I go into the spiritual practice, I'm very comfortable not knowing.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this tension, my personal mind wants to know, but when I'm in the seat of witness, I don't have to.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because, these days, whenever there's anything you don't know that you're curious about, you can generally instantly find the answer by Googling it or whatever. And so I often, when a curiosity comes up and I have the urge to Google it or whatever, I'll say, no, not going to indulge the personal mind this time. Don't need to know it. And that's actually really, I find it's helpful in terms of like that release, the release part of the practice, which is the personal mind wants your attention, it wants you to follow its instructions, and say, no, silly personal mind. No, you're not, you're not the master of me. I'm in the middle of something here. I don't need to listen to you right now. Right? So Mickey has this practice. I don't know. I'm sure some of you have heard this, but he says, if you're eating something and it's really good, like maybe a really nice dessert or whatever, he says, when you get to that last bite, just leave it. Don't eat it. Just to practice, to say, oh, there's a desire. I don't need to follow. I am the master of my domain. I am the captain of my ship, right? My fears, and I'm not going to let my fears and desires rule me. So, and Jill, did you want to come in there? Your hand's sort of gone up and down a couple. So, oh, you're muted. You're muted.
These hands have gone up and down?
No, the little hand on the screen. The raise hand
then
function.
I don't know how it got there. I don't even know how to get it off. Let's
Okay.
see.
Now
Okay.
it's off.
Good.
Okay, well, the meditation this week is don't know. So we'll have lots of chance to try that out some more. I mean, the best place to try it out, of course, is when something comes up in the day that tells you, you have to figure this out. When you notice you're being really bothered by something, in the sense that I have to get it right, right? Even though you know that you don't know. And you know that you don't know if you know, if you're not sure of the answer, then you don't know, right? Oh, should I buy this thing? Who knows? Should I go on this vacation? Should I go here? Should I go there? There's no right answer. And inevitably, your mind will take both sides. So stop trying to stop trying to get it right.
Mhm.
And just say, don't know. Don't know. So that's fine. I don't know. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go over there. You know, it's an adventure. You don't know where it's going. As a avowed perfectionist, I can tell you, wanting to know is a real bitch.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
Needing to get it right. Oh my God. Big source of suffering.
Mhm.
Okay, so should we go on to the practice review? Home practice review? Yeah. So, we had continued practice with the small stuff and meditating with open awareness, moments of centered consciousness. We had the resolution. So see how I'd love to hear how that's going. And then noticing when your model of reality is challenged. Excuse me. So especially, when you have a view and then reality doesn't match that view. Or that belief or that identification. Like if you identify with being intelligent and then you do something stupid and then you're like, oh, no, and then you come up with, some way to blame it on something else, or, you go into this disturbance because it doesn't quite match. So, how about the resolution? Did anyone have any interesting or difficult things come up around the resolution? Any not knowing? Philip, yeah.
I had some urges, and my resolution was no more candy or no more chocolate. And it's actually been more than a week now because I ran out of candy and chocolate 2 days before. So I've had some urges, and I kind of like just sitting with the urge. I'm not that I like it. I'm just interested in it, right? I'm trying to. I just say to myself, what am I trying to? What is this? Why is this urge coming up, and what's it trying to tell me?
And what do you notice
I mean,
in your experience when the urge is there? What do you notice in your body or in your thoughts and your emotions?
just a mild disturbance. Nothing. I've given up more difficult things. So so I'm used to giving up things, and but there's a resentment, definitely.
Yeah. Do you know where in the
You know,
body you feel it?
I think I feel it like in my heart. You know, I feel this pain. You know, I'll be, because I'm so used to, you know, grabbing. I don't eat a lot of candy, but I sort of reward myself with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I've stopped rewarding myself with it, and you know, there's the resentment. There's I mean, I'm aware that it's you know, it's a part of my childhood that I'm pushing into my adulthood. I'm sort of indulging the child in me, and I'm sort of aware of that.
Yeah. I mean, those are just thoughts, right?
I don't know.
I mean, it's a story, right?
So it's
a
yeah,
story.
it's my story. Yeah. Yeah.
And how do you feel when you like don't give in to the urge?
Oh, that's
Like after.
you know, I listened to yeah, I did listen to the intentional talk by Mickey,
Mm-hmm.
and I really appreciated it. And I realized that it's not so much the not eating candy as the sticking to what I intend to do that is important. And it does feel, it feels empowering.
Mm-hmm.
Even this little thing of giving up. I mean, again, I've given up more difficult things, but this is empowering
Mm-hmm.
to because you know, I don't need it, and it's bad for me, and so, you know, it just, I know this is all thinking that's going on, but I do feel like yeah, I feel strongly.
Mm-hmm.
I want to, I'm enjoying in some weird way, getting satisfaction from a better satisfaction from not eating candy than the satisfaction I get from eating it.
And have you noticed the mind questioning the resolution? See?
Oh yeah, yeah. It'll say this is. But again, I've dealt with this before, right? The mind will start arguing. It's an
I'm just
addiction.
curious
So
what the mind comes up with in terms of like, you know, what lines
well,
the mind try and trick you with.
my mind will say nobody will know. Go ahead. Just, you know, you can lie about it. Or my mind will say, it's no big deal. You know, even you'll have a piece of candy, and then you won't lie, and you'll go and you tell everyone you had a piece of candy. So what?
Right.
Those are the two things that come up with me: is either lie or confess. If I do it. and life goes on, right? Life goes on, and you know,
Mm-hmm.
It's tricky stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's very tricky.
Yeah.
And
Thanks.
then I thought of substitutes as well. You know, substitutes. What can I have that's not candy, but that's something similar? So I'm looking. My mind is definitely looking for a way out.
Right. Right. I find for myself that when I have a craving, that I just like, I try and feel my whole body, and there's a relief that comes with that, I find, because it goes from this sort of undefined urge to this bodily sensation, like you see that that's the root of the urge, right? And then the body feels fine, actually. Like it might be a little, you know, discomfort here or there, but there's also other things going on in the body, and so it's like, oh, I don't have to, you know, actually those things are pretty good. And then I generally tell myself, I have all the conditions I need to be happy
Mm.
right now.
But that's true. But that's positive psychology, isn't that?
Um,
That's a gift.
It is positive psychology. It's putting the attention on what's positive in the present moment. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's, for me, it's, and we're going to talk about this later in the class, but it's a Plum Village, like Thich Nhat Hanh mindfulness training, dwelling happily in the present moment. And it's around remembering that we always have all the conditions we need to be happy, and that happiness is mainly dependent on our state of mind, not on what's going on around us.
Mm.
So having that recognition in the moment, I find very, very helpful, because it's so easy to focus on what's missing or what's unpleasant or unwanted.
What is going on with me is very fleeting. You know, it just that like it goes by in, I'd say, 5 seconds. So that's the extent of it. It's not, I'm not wrestling. It's just, I get this, like this sudden restlessness. And then you know, I just kind of shrug my shoulders and.
And tell me something, do you have chocolate and candy in the house?
Right now? No.
No. Okay.
Should I get some?
No, I mean, no. I mean, I find it's a lot easier when it isn't there.
So part of my resolution was also not to buy chocolate and candy. So if I bought it, you know, I could do that, but that was part of my resolution, was not to buy it. I always feel like silly when I buy it, you know. I mean, I've gotten into my car and driven, you know, 15 minutes to the gas station to get a chocolate bar, because I couldn't stand not having one. And I'm almost 70 years old, and I'm thinking to myself, you know, this is so childish. When I
Not
do
me,
it,
not me. I'm never without chocolate in my house. Okay, anyone else want to share? Sorry, Philip, what?
No, my last thing is what I don't know is if I'm going to go back to it after the 3 weeks is up or not.
Yeah. No need to decide now.
Oh, I don't know. Fine.
Can you just repeat what you said? I couldn't hear you properly.
Philip, you mean?
So what I don't.
Go ahead, Philip, sorry.
Yes, I did, Philip.
I said I don't know if I'm going to go back to eating chocolate and candy after the 3 weeks is up. Maybe not.
Okay. How about other folks? You can share about your resolution or any aspect of home practice. Anne, yeah.
So my resolution was about arguing with my husband. And I guess I should have clarified a little bit that specifically what happens when we have an argument or discussion is that I become very entrenched, and then all my energy goes into proving I'm right and he's wrong. So, and I just find that it's just such a silly place to be in. So I actually have successfully avoided it this week. And it's kind of amazing because it's just, conversation is more fun when you're actually interested in finding out, if you disagree with somebody, why you disagree with them. And you can't find that out by reiterating your point of view. Like it's just silly. Whereas if you can't just insist on your own point of view, you have to start asking questions and really trying to understand. I mean, it's like, don't know mind, right? Well, you think you know, and so you have, it's investigating another way of seeing just everything, because everybody sees it somewhat differently. So I've actually really enjoyed it. And it's not the case that there haven't been times when the urges come up because he's just so clearly so wrong. I mean, that happens, but even if you're convinced of that, if you can sort of see it as, how do I understand how did he get to be so confused and so wrong about this? It's and in fact, sometimes the discussion can end up surfacing, problems both with his way of seeing things and also with your way of seeing things, almost inevitably, if you really get down and start to pull things apart. So I've been really enjoying it.
Mm.
So we have discussed, but not argued.
Wonderful. Thanks, Anne.
I have a question. Anne,
Yeah.
did you tell, there was a question about whether Anne was going to tell him in advance or not.
I didn't.
Did he notice?
He didn't say anything, he can be very oblivious. I don't know if any, I mean, I think when you live with somebody for a long time, sometimes it's really hard to, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure I can be oblivious in my own way, but I could ask him, not that I know.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Why don't we try doing breakout groups, and you can talk about your home practice, any aspect of it, whether it's the resolution or some other aspect. Just sharing, whatever's come up for you, whether it's obstacles or things you've noticed or, whatever it might be. So let's see here. So we'll just take about 6 minutes, and we'll have 2 or 3 in each group. And here we go.
Oh, it's the L group, not the Linda group.
Oh, yes, Linda and Lori.
Yepper.
Oh, dear.
Who wants
So
to go first?
Well, I was just going to ask Linda what her resolution was, but Lori, did you have a resolution?
Not a new one. I've been doing eating mindfully once a day since late December.
Oh, that's a long time. Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it took me, I think, 3 years to learn to not do things while eating. Took me a year or two to not eat at my desk. And then, yeah, it took me a long time. That one was hard, but I did it. Except for breakfast this morning, I think. But yeah.
I just do 1 meal a day.
I don't put the rule on mindful. I just put the rule on no news or reading.
Yeah.
And whatever happens after that,
So what were your resolutions? Who wants to go first?
Well, you've heard mine recently, so I'm interested in Linda.
No, I can't remember what yours was.
Well, I changed mine because I heard everybody else. So mine was to work more hours in my job, but everybody else's were things that were going to benefit them, right? So I changed mine. So I wrote a long list then of things like eating better and exercising more and sleeping more. And so I changed mine to exercising a minimum of 45 minutes a day. So, and I feel much better for it.
Has it been difficult?
I feel much better after doing it. Pardon me?
Has it been difficult? Has there been resistance come up?
Oh yeah, in terms of, oh, well, gosh, it's almost midnight. I guess I still need to do it. And so doing it really late at night, and I think that it's typical of putting all kinds of other things ahead of things for me, not making me a priority in my life. It's very, very typical for me to do that. So And then, I said, and I'd also start going to bed before 2 o'clock. And I think that's been good for me too. But like, it's 1:30, which is still before 2, but I want to start backing that up and getting it earlier and better and healthier.
What time do you wake up?
Depends now because of this. So I used to get up for 8:45 to do the chanting meditation group, but now I need to fit one of your meditations in before that. So, or I feel like I should do it in the morning. So now I try and get up at 20 after 8.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's great. You get less sleep than I do. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you sleep well. If you sleep well for that whole time, then that's...
No, not particularly.
Hmm. Hmm.
Linda?
Oh, I felt like when we were in the big group, I felt like the kid who wanted to go, me, 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 me. Only I thought, oh, I always speak first. Somebody else has to speak. I'm not going to speak. I'm not going to speak. So it was an interesting week because my resolution was a project that I've been trying to do for 2 years and been doing really slowly and really poorly. Well, it wasn't positive language. And so it was kind of, which is, this room I'm in was my former employee's office, and I, old archives and files and file boxes and things that are unsorted and old reference and lots of stuff. And I laid him off 2 years ago, and it's been a long. So it was interesting, the sort of the making the resolution, and also Mickey's thing of just, you make a decision, you don't struggle with it, you don't think about it, you just do it. And there were 4 reasons that supported my decision too. One of is I was trying to turn this into a room where I could sit and read, but because it's unfinished and I do so much Zooming in here, it's no longer calm for me to read. So I need to push the room back a little bit more. And also my niece and her husband and 2 daughters are coming to stay in 2 weeks, and that's the spare bed. And so I had an incentive also to make the room better. But the other thing was that, so going through old folders and files, I found I encountered the other one, the model of reality. I had to look at the thing because what I was going through were the visions of myself as the professional I was, and am I that professional anymore? And I found myself keeping more things than I should, because it's like, oh, I remember that project, it was so great, or that was one of my best, or and that self thing, it's like I have, on the one hand, I have a goal, on the other hand, the model of myself that I want to preserve is really strong. So it's I'm in a loop, I got rid of about 3 or 4 boxes of stuff, but then some boxes just got moved around, but at least they're moved around, and things aren't as stuck. And instead of like an hour or 2 is what my commitment, I found some days I was doing 3 or 4 hours because I'm just waiting for a big project to start. So it was actually complicated, and I find I get into the flow and I'm not necessarily reflective and aware. I'm just going for it, and which means that that awareness of what I'm resisting and what I'm keeping is not so good. So we'll see how next week goes.
Mm-hmm. Lots of interesting stuff. Okay, welcome back, everyone. So I hope that you learn something there about how other folks are experiencing their home practice, maybe about how you experience your own home practice. Anyone want to share anything that came up there? Philip? You're muted.
Sean, I was with Sean. Is it Sean?
Yep.
Yeah, and he said something I found very interesting. He said he finds it much more easier to stop something than to start something. So his resolution was to start something, and I found that fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sean, did you want to talk to
Yeah,
that?
but I found, my resolution was to start meditating at least 45 minutes a day. I had a hard time getting past that. But I found that I had thought at the beginning, for me, it's easier to start something than to stop something. But I realized that I have to stop other things to start something. So for this meditation, I have to stop surfing the internet for half hour or whatever to fit the meditation in.
And how was that?
I wasn't successful every day, but I tried to do it as best I could. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what did you notice in terms of your thoughts or bodily sensations, or like what went on when you were struggling?
So in the past, when I meditate, I'm always thinking, am I doing this right? Am I wasting my time? Am I getting what I need to out of this? And I think about the other stuff that I need to do and get done that day.
Mm. And are these thoughts like, how sticky are these thoughts?
Some days are very sticky.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, because a big part of the relax, release, lean back is noticing that, right? And not getting stuck by them, not getting pulled into them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Anyone else? We can, if not, we can certainly move on to chapter 14. So, chapter 14 is clinging to false solidity, or letting go of false solidity, I should say. So, and this chapter is probably the densest, the most dense, and the most kind of, I find the most difficult to grasp of all the chapters in the book, I would say. How did people find this chapter? Anyone? You loved it. Yeah. So, I mean, he really goes into the nuts and bolts of experience here, and how basically, we talked about the mental model last week, and this sort of, and how that's a simplification of reality. And here, he talks about this idea of, that when there's, that our consciousness is kind of in this place where, we don't know what's going on, we don't have control, we don't feel safe. And so when something goes by, we put our attention on it, right? We narrow our attention onto it, and we kind of hold it with our attention. And then it becomes more solid. And so then it's something that we can kind of hold on to, a place of solidity, at least perceived solidity. And so we do that, and then we something else, and then we relate the two, and that's how we build our psyche, our mental model. And this clinging to these thoughts, we think we're building a safe place, but actually, we're building, as he said, we're building our house on sand, right? Because these are all just things in our mind. They're not reality. And so we're constantly trying to protect the model. I mean, this is very similar to last week. And so he says, if you really slow down and notice how, whenever there's a lack of control, lack of sense of not feeling safe, noticing how we tend to cling in those situations to try and find some sense of safety. And he encourages us to just let go, to not cling, to let ourselves feel, out of control, if you will, to let ourselves feel untethered, I guess, right? And he says this will be really scary, right? And I've certainly experienced that a lot. It like a big fear can come up. Has anybody, anybody here notice that at all, either in this practice, like in this course, or even, whenever in your life, this where it feels like things are kind of out of control and scary? Yeah. And so, the safe place, one thing you can, I don't know if grab onto is the right thing, but one place you can put your attention is the seat of self, right? Because that doesn't change, and you can really actually find some sense of stability there. But it's not so much that you're looking for stability. In fact, you're not. You're just sort of watching it all from this place where you're not going to get sucked into clinging, right? Because if you lose your awareness, you'll just cling. You just grab that thing, right? And he talks about, if you just let yourself watch it and don't cling, eventually you'll come through that fear, and there'll be great peace. So what I've noticed is that sometimes happens, and quite often it doesn't. Quite often it just goes on. But that's okay. That's okay, right? If I'm clear, if I'm aware, then I don't have to see it as a problem. How does this like, I'm just wondering if anyone wants to share your sense of this, or your questions, your sort of, your disagreement, I just like to hear how this is landing for you.
Just want to clarify something.
Mhm.
When we say, or when you're saying, and in the book, when it says like, let go of control, I found it helpful to recognize that that's let go of control of wanting to control my thoughts or my emotions to be other than they are. Right? When it's let go of control of the experience, it's of our own inner experience that we're talking about, right?
And the outer as well. Yeah, both. You know, I mean, it's very similar to the don't know mind, right? There's something going on outside you're trying to figure out, and it's letting go of needing to know. Whether, you know, this or that is going to happen outside. You know, it's like, you know, maybe, you know, like for me, like sometimes my partner Bob will go out and I'm expecting him back at a certain time and he doesn't come home, and my mind starts going, oh, well, you know, did he get into an accident? Is he okay? And so letting go of, you know, and saying, oh, you know, silly mind, like why would I worry about this? Why would I want to worry about this thing that I have no idea, and it's just my mind, you know, going on. So it's, in that sense, it's letting go of, you know, of the outer situation, right? So it, yeah, it's also letting go of, I mean, it's letting go of resistance, right? And that, you know, just whenever the mind wants to figure something out that it can't figure out, like that's resistance. So it's letting go of that. And that often relates to the outer world.
I can really relate to the outer world experiences much easier than I can to my own spiritual confrontation. I don't really feel fear. I mean, I'm aware that the changes that I'm trying to bring about in myself are changing the way I think, feel, and behave. And I'm very aware of the fact that I don't really know who I'll be when I do this. And I'm fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just completely fine with it. It's almost like a relief, to be honest. But I still have these things in the outside world that I'm creating catastrophes, you know, that don't ever manifest in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I even do that with the past. You know, I look at something that didn't happen, and my mind will say, but what if it had happened? You know, and I'll go down that rabbit hole. It's so strange.
Yeah, yeah. It's like I've had so many, Mark Twain has a line, something like, you know, I've had so many disasters in my life, and some of them actually happened. Exactly. Right?
Yeah, exactly. I've heard that one, yeah. I use that one a lot. I always thought it was Montaigne, but he told it's Mark Twain. So
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I you know, I find this chapter is I mean, it's pretty advanced in terms of mindfulness, right? Like to really see that moment to moment clinging is not easy, to put it mildly. So I wouldn't worry too much about this. But if anyone does have any questions, you know.
one question.
Oh,
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that I think the other, I mean, the other side of this, there's fear, it seems to me at times, but there's also, it's the don't know mind, it's the liberation, it's the recognition that, wow, I don't have to have an opinion on that. I don't have to, you know, judge and you know, because it seems like so much of our lives we spend walking around feeling like we have to, you know, it's like Olympic judges everywhere holding up marks to the world, right? And it's like, hey, I could just cut all that out That like it doesn't need, and that I find is just hugely liberating and fun. Like, why have an opinion? Who cares? Yeah. So
Mhm.
I can relate to that too, Anne. And I find it's kind of nice to be in a conversation because people want to talk to you then. They feel free and they feel open to be able to say what they're thinking and what their opinion is and what's on their mind because they're not being met by your resistance. I think it is very liberating for more than just ourselves. And I've found for myself, I've been really stuck, like I said earlier this week, and really not aware and grounded and centered. And it is a frustrating place to be. It's so much nicer when I can just kind of relax into things and let things happen. Like I've created so much nonsense in my mind and listening to it, and like my mind was telling me, you don't want to go to class tonight. You don't want to be in that chair. You don't want to do this. You don't need to be there. And Lori, I almost jumped in at one point and said, are you talking directly to me right now? Because I have to be here. I have to be in this Zoom room tonight. Like I got to knock this nonsense out and get back into my seat of awareness because it is a way nicer place to live. So I'm very grateful for this class tonight.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thanks, Kelly. Okay. Are we okay to move on to the next chapter? Yeah. Okay. Linda? Yeah.
This is just a vague question, but how do you identify how resistance manifests? Like resistance, or like I guess like, so what in this chapter is that clinging to like a vision or an idea or whatever is also part of the resistance because you're resisting a reality that's bigger than your mind, you're resisting a reality. But what other like sometimes during the week I think, what am I supposed to be what resistance am I supposed to be relaxing around? I don't know how to see it. I don't know, like, how do I, and sometimes is dispersion resistance, is busyness resistance. Like I just like, you often say when you see the resistance, but how do we see it?
Right.
Like, what does it look like?
Right. Well, I think of it actually as more, what does it feel like? What it feels like is the exertion of will or effort to either keep the experience away, like to not experience what's going on, or to hold on to the experience and not let it go. So, and often there's a sense of struggle, of wanting things to be different, of needing to figure things out, and I did want to raise, because I know a couple of people in the one-on-ones raised the, this distinction between the disturbance and the resistance, and some confusion around that. And it is confusing because our experience is complex, right? And you can't just say, if you have a tightness in your chest, then that's this or that's that, right? I mean, it's, the tightness in the chest could be the disturbance, but it could also be the resistance. And basically the disturbance is kind of what's trying to happen. And the resistance is the effort to prevent it from happening or make it go away, or make it not go away in the case of something pleasant that you're clinging to. So, in Buddhism, they have a teaching called the second arrow. And it's this idea that there's this initial pain, which is like the first arrow that hits you. And then there's our resistance to the pain. Or sometimes it's called our reaction to the pain, but it's like what's going on in your mind that's making it so much worse often, right? Or it could be a bracing against it. And that second arrow hitting in the same place as the first arrow is much more painful. And that's where the real, like the far greater suffering is. And that's the resistance, right? So there's the initial thing that comes up, but then we try not to experience it. We try and make it stop. We wish that it would go away. We wish that things were different. We try to figure out what to do. And all that is resistance to that. You know, the samskara gets hit, or it doesn't even have to be a samskara. Sometimes it's just something happens outside that is, you know, by its nature unpleasant. And then so that happens, but then instead of just letting ourselves experience it, we resist it. We brace in our body. We, you know, try and tell ourselves that it shouldn't be like this. You know, we try and figure out what to do to make it go away. All that is resistance. So, you know, the disturbance coming up is a good thing, right? We want to turn around our conventional thinking and say, when the disturbance comes up and, you know, when the samskara gets hit, that's a chance to release, right? It's come out of the depths and now it's here. So now it can go on its way if we just don't resist it, right? So the disturbance is good. So then don't resist it. But you know, it always comes up with the, you know, the sense, like there's a reason why we stored it, because it was uncomfortable, right? And it comes up with that discomfort, comes up with that fear or that tension or whatever it is, right? And so, you know, we naturally, again, want to not experience that, but whatever exertion, whatever will, whatever struggle or effort to not experience it, that's the resistance. So, and it is something that takes.
Is it kind of like,
Hmm?
is it kind of like pretending that it's not really happening, something like that? Like, let's say your girlfriend doesn't call you for 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
Just inventing something, right? And you're starting to feel anxious.
Mm-hmm.
So you just pretend that it's not happening, that she's not leaving you. Is that, like, how do you use the example of your partner, you know, he hasn't come home, and I've had the same experience.
Mm-hmm.
They're not home at the time. You expect someone to be home and you start getting worried or anxious. I usually think it's something I did.
Yeah.
Which is even worse.
Yeah. Well, again, if you notice that there's a sense of defending against feeling what's coming up, then that's resistance. Right. So it really is noticing the felt sense of the thing. You know, noticing effort that you're making, whatever that effort is. Right? Because the disturbance kind of happens on its own, but then the effort, I mean, it does kind of happen on its own, but you'll notice that you're making an effort. You're expending energy to try and make things how you want them.
And Laura, surely that can sometimes manifest as, you know, distracting yourself or getting busy, or there's all kinds of things we do to move out of that. So, and I find with myself sometimes, so I jump right from the disturbance into the avoidant behavior without actually even recognizing that there's anything to be felt. I mean, I think we all have those patterns.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's what we have to stop doing.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Or
you have to notice it first, right? And then work with it, right? Relax, release, lean back, and just see what's going on, and see if you can let it in, which, you need grace for that to happen, right? Maybe you let it in, or maybe the resistance keeps going. But at least if you watch it, you get, a better and better idea of what's going on, and grace will come.
so there's a gradual growth. It's like a continuum, because obviously this doesn't happen overnight. So I feel like what's happening with me is I'm changing the relationship between my awareness and my psyche. So my psyche dominated that relationship, and I'm trying to shift over to the awareness so that the awareness dominates the relationship.
Mhm.
And the only thing I'm worried about is, is my awareness real awareness, or am I just creating another character that is looking at the characters? And that's what's my
Yeah,
question.
yeah. Well, the question I would ask is, are you more the person you want to be?
I am.
If you're more the person you want to be, I think, that's pretty good.
It's working.
Yeah,
It's working.
yeah,
I love that.
I think the psyche would want to question that, like would want to question you doing that because they want to win. Right? So wouldn't they challenge you on that?
yeah.
Because you're headed possibly on the right path. And they're like, no, 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 no.
Yeah. Yes, sirree. Yeah. Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, a teacher of mine, he calls our lower mind, if you will, he calls them, he personifies them, he calls them little bosses. He says, the little bosses are always trying to tell us what to do. But, it's just, to me, it's the same as lower mind, higher mind. Right. So, and the awareness lets us be our higher mind, which is our aspiration for how we want to be. Okay. So let's go on to chapter 15, the path of unconditioned happiness. And so this is going into more depth around this idea of noticing the heart closing, and making a very strong commitment to say it's never worth closing. And so I'm not going to give away my happiness. Right. And he talks about making the vow that says, I am never going to give away my happiness. So even if my spouse leaves me, if I lose my job, even if I'm thrown in jail for a murder I didn't commit and stay there my whole life, I'm not going to let that take away my happiness. And in this chapter, he really emphasizes this idea of committing to that. And that doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be able to do that, because obviously we have reactivity, we have resistance, we have samskaras, right? But what I find is when that commitment, and he talks, there's a part in the chapter where he says, you will have to stay conscious, centered, and committed at all times. You will have to stay one-pointed on your commitment to remain open and receptive to life. So that's a very high bar, right? To be conscious, centered, and committed at all times, right? 24/7, every moment. And also maintain your intention, your awareness of this intention, your commitment to remain open and receptive to life. And then a couple of paragraphs later, he says, if you have trouble remembering that, then meditate. And he says, meditation strengthens your center of consciousness so that you're always aware enough to not allow your heart to close. I wish he'd teach me that meditation because I've meditated for 21 years, 22 years, somewhere in there. And I can't stay aware all the time. So, Mickey has an extraordinary level of mindfulness. But all that said, what I notice is that the more I water that intention, the seeds of that intention, the more clear I am that anytime I lose my happiness, I should look here, not there. Right? And I should ask myself this question, is this worth giving up my happiness for? And I am clear. When I ask myself that question, I always know the answer. Right? It doesn't mean I can just command myself to be happy. It doesn't mean I can actually, stop closing and have the heart open. But when I have that clarity, then I stop feeding that closing. And when I stop feeding the closing, by saying in my mind, oh, they should never have done that. I can't be happy in this situation, Then, the closing starts to just naturally lessen. And there's it's a real anchor, for staying centered and not letting my personal mind drive my unhappiness. So, yeah, he talks about making it a game, which I think is great. This idea of when someone does something that causes us to be unhappy, looking at that as like, I forget who I was talking with, and we talked about this tennis analogy, and it's like, imagine that person who just caused you this unhappiness, they're like this great tennis player and they just hit this amazing shot at you and went right by you, right? And it's like, and looking at the situation and going, boy, that was a good shot. That was a good shot. Got right by me, I lost my happiness. I closed, and not beating myself up for it, but instead going, wow, yeah, life 15, me love, in this game, but it's just a game, right?
But it begs the question, what does happiness mean?
Yeah, and happiness is probably not the best word. What it really means is having your heart open, right? So it could,
keep your heart open.
maybe someone close to you died. Doesn't mean you should be happy. It means you should let the heart stay open for you to experience, that sense of loss, right? Which, if you look closely, is love, right? It's your love that's causing that sense of loss. Or, even if it's great fear, could be great fear, and you're staying open to that. So it's not necessarily happiness, but it's maybe it's equanimity. But it's just the idea that when you stay open, you can see clearly, and you can learn, and you can grow, and it can be a rich experience, even if it's really unpleasant. So it's this idea of not You know, Thich Nhat Hanh would often talk about how we underestimate the goodness of suffering. And, you know, he says it's not that we're looking for suffering, we're definitely not, you know. But when suffering is there, can we make good use of it? Can we let it in? Can we learn from it? Can we use it? You know, he has this other saying, no mud, no lotus, right? Can we use the mud to grow the lotus? Because the lotus doesn't grow without the mud, right? If you've never suffered, how can you have any compassion, right? We have compassion because we've suffered ourselves. So, you know, we're watering our seeds of compassion by that, you know, going through that suffering. And we can now understand other people's suffering because of our own. And to the extent that we can open to it and learn from it, we can help other people to lessen their suffering. So, so there is goodness in suffering. At least there is potential goodness in suffering, if we can be with it. Right, and that is the first noble truth, right? The first noble truth is there is suffering, and that noble truth is the practice of the noble truth is to understand suffering, to really like feel it and know what it's like, right? So again, we're not trying to extend the suffering, but we're just recognizing this is a valuable experience. And I don't have to run away from it. And I can keep my heart open. Is this worth closing? No. No. You know? So what do folks think of this idea that happiness is a choice?
I agree. Always.
One time I was driving with one of my kids and somebody cut me off. And at first I was really upset and angry. And then somebody else did, you know, an obnoxious driving move. And I turned, I shouldn't have, he was too young at this point for me to use this kind of language, but I said, oh, it must be drive like an asshole day. And we had so much fun the rest of the drive because every time somebody did something terrible, it was like, oh, look, another person who's celebrating drive like an asshole day. So yeah, flip it around, right?
Yeah. Well, that's making it a game, right? You know? We take ourselves so seriously. Yeah.
I just think that Anne should call that into CBC or something like that. Should just be spread so widely. That's so great.
Well, ultimately, every day is drive like an asshole day in Toronto. So,
Linda? Yeah.
I find this whole thing about choosing the happiness, so like the whole thing about from not getting embroiled in the issues, but just releasing them a bit and then choosing it. It's just this total flip from my, you know, lifetime habit of going, what's wrong with me? Everything's wrong. It's what's wrong, you know, and then and then to be able to go, oh, it may be wrong, but it doesn't matter, and it may be the wrongness actually isn't wrong. I think that's the thing that's sort of very liberating.
Yeah. Well, wrong is a judgment, right? And you know, we may, you know, hold on to our judgments to our own detriment and try and impose our views on others, right?
Well, I guess for me, it's like, oh, I'm wrong. I'm like this. I'm not doing it right. I'm just, it's always self-reflective,
Mm.
but that itself is its own trap, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to challenge that.
Yeah.
Not challenge it like two cars playing chicken on the road, but or maybe it is, but to actually give an alternate, an off ramp, like an alternate, way to handle it.
Yeah. Well, and you can practice don't know as well. You can ask yourself, like, is this true, right?
Or whether it
or are you
matters.
sure, right? Like if I say 2 + 2 = 4, I'm pretty sure that I'm right on that one. But if I say, you know, you should always hold open the door for somebody. Say, well, there's room for disagreement on that one, right? There's room for disagreement on just about everything.
It's kind of a relief because my sister-in-law once in one of those like difficult family discussions called my husband and I Mr. and Mrs. Know-It-All.
Mhm.
And it was a really humbling moment. And it was shocking that when she said it, and it was also really, oh, so that's what it feels like when people, they're just too polite to say. So that, and then it is that need to know, right? That need to find the solution is that's the second arrow. That's the needing to fix everything, needing there to be an answer.
Yeah, and wanting that safety, that solidity, that false solidity, if you will,
Of certainty.
that sense of control and certainty.
And
Yeah.
also the thing of needing to give advice to other people. That's also I think the other face of it. When somebody is doing something and maybe you think they're struggling and unhappy, or maybe you think they're just doing it wrong. The need to fix it for them, the need to, have you tried this? Have you tried that? And that's intrusive and kind of judgmental to them.
That's your view.
Yeah. Because there's a thing of it, you assume that they can't figure it out if it wasn't for your great advice, maybe. Anyways, it's interesting.
Yeah. It's like, Rumi says, what is it? There's something like, there's a field beyond right and wrong. I'll meet you there, right? But of course, he's talking about there's always there's the ultimate dimension and there's the historical dimension, right? There's like the absolute truth, if you will, and then there's the relative truth. And, so it's important not to lose sight of that. you know, we can say, well, there's no such thing as right and wrong. There's no such thing as good and evil. But of course, there are some things that seem pretty, you know, if you assume that we're all these, like if you look at it from the perspective of no separate self, no space, no time, no being, no non-being, then it's easy to say, okay, no right or no wrong. But when you look at it from the perspective of individual lives,
Being bombed.
yeah, then, you know, so it depends on the perspective. Anyway, this is way beyond my pay grade because I shouldn't really be speaking about this stuff. But anyway, it's kind of the mystery of life type stuff, right? But I do find it that the more I practice, it feels like the less I know, you know, and the more comfortable I am not knowing. It's like, I don't, you know, and just being able to rest in the mystery, in the unsolvable mystery. Yeah, Mark and Michelle.
Just going back to your earlier question about do we think we can choose to be happy?
Mm-hmm.
I would say absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I think I would put it back into what came up before. I think we could choose to have our heart open. I know I can't choose to be happy in a moment when I'm sad or angry, but I can choose, and I don't even think I can choose to be open in that moment from experience, because when I shut down, I do that very well, very
Yeah.
effectively.
Yeah.
But I guess where I'm at is I can choose, I'm at the point now where I'm aware I'm shutting down, and I can choose to try not to.
Yeah. Well,
That's
a big part of it is just actually seeing the shutting down, seeing the closing, recognizing that closing, right?
That's what I keep hearing, but I don't find that enough in the moment often. I'm right there to give myself a pat on the back for recognizing, but I'm still pissed and
Yeah.
shut down in the moment. Like for me, it takes a lot longer.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that's pretty universal too. I mean, you know, we keep saying, well, you know, treat it as a game, see that it's not really a problem, you know, see that it's okay to not be okay. But when it feels not okay, when it feels like a problem, it's hard to, or can be hard to have that perspective.
I think that's where I bang up again a little bit, where I have resistance with Mickey's talks and some of his stuff where he's just like laughing and saying, just choose not to have that emotion, or just, you know, I know he doesn't say that exactly, but like just,
He never says that.
Just step back. But
He's not talking about happiness as an emotion so much as he's saying he's focused on the choice. He's focused on what's going on in the mind, right? And is the mind reinforcing the closing, or is the mind seeing through the closing? And that's dependent on the awareness and the intention, right? You need the awareness. You need to disidentify with the thoughts and the emotions and you know, and have that perspective. And you need to have the very clear intention that says it's never worth closing. I'm never better off closed than open. And neither are the people around me.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, and he says, this will take you all the way to enlightenment. In fact, it's the fast track. But it's not easy. You know, and it's to me, it's the North Star, right? It's being aware all the time, having that intention all the time. I mean, that's the North Star. I'm going in that direction, but you know, I still have my feet on the earth. I'm not going to reach the North Star. I mean, maybe I will, but I certainly wouldn't expect it.
In times of great challenge, like when my stuff is being hit, great or small, right? But especially great. I think of the luminaries, right? I mean, I think of Nelson Mandela, and I think of Gandhi, and I think, these are living examples of people who keep their hearts open no matter what.
Yeah.
And if they can do it, why can't I? That's the only question I ask myself, is if they can do it, why can't I?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, if anybody can do anything, I mean, I know I can't play tennis like Rafael Nadal, but I can play tennis. So, I'm just trying, I just look at the luminaries, and that's why I'm here
Mm-hmm.
doing this course.
Yeah. And, Mark, I would just say to you, like the path may be long, but it's a lovely path, right? So, part of what I'm hearing in you is this wanting it to be different than it is, right? Wanting it to be easier, or no?
No, I think I want Mickey to be more honest about how hard it is, but that's okay. I don't need him to do that. I form my own opinion.
Hmm.
I'm happy for the I'm happy for the difficulty. I realize the value of it.
Hmm.
I think it's very hard. I think it would be easier to not.
Yeah.
Much easier. And for a long time and for much of the day, much happier. But I also feel that once you've started, I personally couldn't stop and go back and don't want to, but I think it would be easier to check out and tune out again. I personally, I don't think I can, but I think you can be happier. You can be happy,
Yeah.
sorry, for a long time that way.
Yeah.
So I think I'm just trying to be really honest with myself. And maybe this is also a form of resistance or a method to make sense of it. But yeah, I certainly have lots of resistance. But I think I'm pretty clear-headed about what's involved.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and Mickey does speak in a kind of a light way, but he also does say, when you choose this path, like when you're, on the spiritual path, that, he gave that analogy a couple of chapters ago of the dog and the electric fence, and he says, you're constantly pushing against the edge of your comfort zone, so you're constantly out of your comfort zone. You're constantly feeling these disturbances and letting them in, and that that is
I have an analogy. I know Jason has something to say, but if I just say one more thing, when I'm a swimmer, and recently I kind of had a breakthrough of realizing the hardest thing about swimming is to maintain a kind of focus where you're in tension with the water the entire time. What most of us do is stroke a bit and then pull out the arm because we get tired or we lose focus. But the best way to, when it's really working, you're in tension with the surface of the water the whole time. And the more aware of you are of it, the easier it is. And that's kind of my metaphor for all of this right now. You need that suffering, you need that resistance, you need that kind of surface tension on the water to learn.
Yeah. And that's a great attitude, right? Because that's seeing the goodness of the suffering, if you will.
Mm-hmm. I'm grateful for the suffering.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark. Jason?
Hey, yeah, I can relate with the difficulty. But I think what comes to me is like this, if I remember reading the book correctly, if it's this one or the surrender experiment, like this came to him at a relatively young age, younger than I am. I think it was university or in around that time when it came to him. And this is like something that was I would look at it as a gift. This is probably at the same around the same time where I was building these habits of closing even before that. And so here I am trying to learn something that this gentleman has been practicing, or has been, came to him rather easily. He talks of it easily, and it's been habitual for him. And I have built habits that are the complete opposite. So the journey is to change. And it is easier to not change. I mean, if it wasn't easy, everybody would do this, right? But it's, yeah, I hear what Mark's saying, but this man is special, I think, with this type of practice, and that's why I'm here. That's why I'm here, because he has something I want, right? As in you too, Laurie. So yeah, it's not easy.
No, it is not. It's definitely not. Okay, I just want to move on, just talk about one more thing before we end tonight, and that is this seventh mindfulness training. So I'm going to share my screen here just to, and we're not going to, we don't have a lot of time for it, and it's not Mickey's teaching, it's Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching, but let me just make this big. Okay. So, Plum Village has these so-called mindfulness trainings. So, and the idea is that they're a lens that we can look at our daily life through, and setting an intention in terms of how to practice in daily life. And I've heard it said, he has what's called the 5 mindfulness trainings and the 14 mindfulness trainings. This is the 7th of the 14. And so these are more detailed than the 5, if you will. And I've heard that Thai said to the monastics that this is the most important of the 14. This is the most important of them all. Dwelling happily in the present moment. And so he says here, aware that life is available only in the present moment. We're committed to training ourselves to live deeply each moment of daily life. We will try not to lose ourselves in dispersion or be carried away by regrets about the past, worries about the future, or craving, anger, or jealousy in the present. So, this is just a different perspective. I find Mickey and Ty, are really looking at the same thing, right? To live deeply each moment of daily life means to let it in, to not resist it, right? And to stay in awareness, not to lose ourselves in dispersion, sort of just getting, getting lost in thought, or be carried away by regrets about the past or worries about the future, or whatever difficult emotion is going on in the present. So just really having that sense of this moment, this in-breath, this out-breath, whatever's going on now, let me just be here with it, right? And then we're determined to learn the art of mindful living. And by the way, if anyone has any questions, please just jump in or raise your hand. We're determined to learn the art of mindful living by touching the wondrous, refreshing, and healing elements that are inside and around us in all situations. In this way, we will be able to cultivate seeds of joy, peace, love, and understanding in ourselves, thus facilitating the work of transformation and healing in our consciousness. So this is just this sense of that, of putting our mind on what is positive in the present moment, and having a sense of wonder, a sense of, rather than like deciding how things should be, instead having this openness of just sort of, noticing like, how cool is this moment, being alive right now, right? This, and that there's always things around us that are wondrous, refreshing, healing, right? And in this way, we cultivate seeds of joy, peace, love, and understanding, right? And transform and heal our consciousness. And this is just, again, it's being with what is there, and not, and letting go of wanting things to be different. And instead just opening to what's there. And then we're aware that real happiness depends primarily on our mental attitude and not on external conditions. And that we can live happily in the present moment simply by remembering that we already have more than enough conditions to be happy. So this is very similar to the chapter 15, saying that happiness is a choice. It depends. So he's, instead of phrasing it like that, he phrases it as, depends primarily on our mental attitude and not on external conditions, right? It's what is our mind saying in response to those external conditions, or internal conditions for that matter. I mean, it might be a pain in the body or whatever, but what is our mental attitude around this? And he says, there's always enough conditions to be happy, right? And it's at its most basic, that's just the fact that we're alive, right? Or that we have enough food to eat, that we have shelter, that there isn't a war going on around us, right? Or as Ty used to like to say, he says, when you have a toothache, all you want is to be rid of your toothache. So if you don't have a toothache right now, why aren't you happy with your non-toothache, right? If you had a toothache, you'd be so happy that you don't have a toothache right now. So why can't you be happy about that? So, this is just, I find that just reading this training and remembering these things, it helps me to really commit to just being present and open and recognizing the positive in the present moment. Even when things are not as we want, right? So in the home practice handout, I've got the training there, so you don't actually have to write it down. I should have said that before. And it's also on the Plum Village website if you go there. And I have a link to it in the home practice handout. To all 14, actually. I mean, they're all on one page on the website. You may want to read this training over and just see how that, bringing these intentions to mind, this training to mind when you're working, especially as I said, when you're working with the happiness is a choice thing, with the, it's never worth closing, right? Remembering that it's all about your mental attitude and where your awareness is, what you put your attention on. So we're almost out of time. So okay, so I'm just looking at the home practice going, this is not this week's home practice. Anyway, so yeah, the meditation this week is going to be not knowing. And we're going to continue with the moments of center consciousness, the small stuff, and the resolution. And then setting a strong intention not to give away your happiness. Asking, is this worth closing? When you notice your heart closing. And then just, looking over this mindfulness training during the week. And there's a talk called Practice Presence, which is mainly about taming the mind so that consciousness goes where you want it to go, rather than where your personal mind wants it to go. Which again is a life's work, but it's really important. And then reading the next 2 chapters. So we just have a minute or 2 left. Anybody have any questions or comments? No? Okay, well, have a wonderful week, everyone. And by the way, for those who don't have, who still have a one-on-one coming up, I'll send out the sign up for that. Actually, I better send it out tonight. If I don't send it out tonight, I'll send it out on Monday. I'm doing a 4-day thing. The next 4 days, I'm going to be completely offline. So I'm doing a Tony Robbins course. It's like 14 to 16 hours a day. It's crazy. Anyway, so I'm going to be out of touch till Monday.
Mindful is that?
It's very mindful, actually. It's very mindful. It's very mindful. It's not, I mean, Ty always said, learn what you can from someone, Just because someone smokes doesn't mean they don't have anything of use. And Tony, I find Tony actually is very, very in tune with lots of mindfulness teachings. Because at its root, what he's talking about mainly is training the mind. And what?
I was going to say that, when Mark was talking about, the problem that he was having with Singer being so glib, or somewhat glib, I was going to say, I was thinking that, part of what I find him a bit motivational, and purposefully motivational. So, I read the 3 Pillars of Zen before I read The Untethered Soul. I've read the 3 Pillars of Zen many times, and it's so difficult to, it's just dense. And then when I read Singer, it was like, oh, this is it just was. He made it sound easy, and I want it to be easy. So that's what drew me to it. Was, well, maybe it is this easy. So when you mentioned Tony Robbins, I can see how Michael Singer and Tony Robbins have something in common, because they're both extremely motivational.
Yeah. And if you go on YouTube, you can. I think it's YouTube. Anyway, there's one of the Mickey only gave interviews to basically 3 people. The woman Tammy Simon from Sounds True, and Oprah, and Tony Robbins.
Wow.
But anyway, I'm not here to promote Tony Robbins. I'm just telling you, I'm offline for the next 4 days, and I'll be back on Monday. So have a wonderful week, and I look forward to seeing you next Wednesday.
Take care.
You too. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Take care,
Night.
everyone. Have a good week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.